Hello, friends, and welcome to Liam Teaches Chess. Sure, a lot of you know me from fantasy football, but I used to be a chess teacher in New York City. I'm around 1900 USCF, 2000 to 2100 online, depending where you play. And this channel, I'm both going to review the tournament games I play and also have more beginner series like this is how you do the rook and queen checkmate. But kicking things off today with a video reviewing my recent tournament at St. Pete. This was a Swiss, meaning if you win, you play the winners. If you lose, you play the losers. It's 4-round Swiss. I'm rated about 1900 USCF. My first game is against Chad, who's rated about 1700 USCF. That would be the United States Chess Federation rating. I was beating Chad last week and lost a game in time control, so we met up in round one again. He played e4. I played c5. This is the Sicilian defense, where you control the center of the board without a center pawn. He plays d4 right away. Little atypical here, but in general, when you're trading a center pawn, when you're trading not a center pawn for a center pawn, meaning my c pawn for the d pawn, that is good for the team getting rid of not one of their center pawns, their e or d pawns. And white plays c3, which is a gambit. A gambit is when you give something up, but you get something in return. And black has a couple options here. They could play d3, give the pawn back, let white develop the bishop, maybe block their queen. Or you can do what I did in the game, which is I captured on c3. And what does white get in return? Well, they get development. I spent a turn capturing the c-pawn. They get to develop their knight. If you look at their side of the board, they have a center pawn developed. They have a knight developed. I don't have any pieces developed. Not really great for me, but I am up, if you count the material, 1 pawn. So I'm up a pawn, but I'm down in development. So basically, white is trying to give the pawn to checkmate me, and I am going to try to play defense. So I played d6. I think the normal move here is e6, but I haven't really faced this gambit with an early d4. And so I was thinking, why can't I go d6? Why can't I go g6, bishop g7, knight f6, and castle, kind of like a dragon's defense? Let's find out. I recently started playing the Sicilian defense, so I don't always play it. I'm still learning things. Sicilian, known as a very theoretical opening. White developed their knight to f3, and I developed my knight to c6. We're both developing our knights, controlling the center of the board. White plays bishop c4, developing their bishop, and staring at my f-pawn. The f-pawn is the weakness of the king, because only the king defends it. And so here I had a little think. I have to be aware of attacks like knight g5. I have to be aware of attacks like queen b3. And so I wasn't really sure if I could get away with playing g6 right away. I have to be aware of moves like castling and just giving away the pawn, trying to open up lines. Maybe I have to play e6 here. But I went ahead and played g6. I think white's best move is probably something like queen b3. And now I have to play e6. And why that wouldn't be great is, you want to think about what moves you're doing, how you're spending your time. And I played g6 with the intention of putting my bishop here. So then if I also have to play e6, which blocks in my light squared bishop, I'm not getting, I don't want to put my bishop on e7. I'm getting all these holes around my king. But my opponent castled. I played bishop g7, and they played queen e2, preparing moves like e5, protecting their bishop. I played queen c7, attacking the bishop in some lines, and further defending e5 and getting my queen off the d-file. And my opponent played knight d5, attacking my queen. Obviously, I saw this, and my plan was to play queen b8. You kind of can tuck your queen away in some lines here, is something I know about. And my plan was to play queen b8, play e6, kick the knight out, move my knight, and get castled, and just say, hey, I'm up a pawn. What are you doing about it? My opponent plays rook d1, developing the rook. And I played bishop d7. There were some lines I was calculating where my opponent would play e5. Um, if I didn't play bishop d7, like if I just go ahead and play knight f6, I was worried about things like e5, knight takes, pawn takes, and then something like bishop b5, where the rook is attacking here through the knight, the bishop's attacking here, like maybe I have to play king f8 here. I don't know. I was worried about it, so I said, "Why? You know what? Let's just play bishop d7. We'll figure it out." My opponent played bishop f4, lining the bishop up with the queen, and I played e5 here. This move does two things. One, obviously it attacks the bishop, so it gives me a tempo. It kind of shuts down the center for now, where my opponent has all their pieces developed. I don't have my knight developed. He's castled. I'm not castled. And so, okay, I'm getting some time. I attack the bishop. It's saddling me what we call a backwards pawn. A backwards pawn is a pawn that takes 2 turns to be defended by a teammate pawn. And a backwards pawn is generally viewed as a weakness, meaning something I'm going to have to defend because my opponent's going to be able to pile up the pieces here, attack it, and they control the square in front of the backwards pawn, so I can never really get rid of it. I would love to trade this pawn, for example. They played bishop g5, and I gave the bishop another kick. My opponent gave a long think here. Again, we're playing game 30 here, which is pretty fast time control if you're not aware. For classical time chess, usually you get game 45, game 60, something like this. Game 30, time goes quick. So we played bishop e3, just centralizing the bishop, and I developed my knight to f6, getting my knight developed, and obviously I'm calculating lines like takes, and what do I do about defending this pawn? Probably bishop e7. So he traded. I went here. He got his other rook in the game, and I played g5. The reason why I'm playing g5 is I want to castle, but if I castle, he will take my pawn, weakening my king. And so my plan was first play g5, stop them from seeing me. I'm not really worried about h4. I thought I could play g4 in response. And then I'm going to play g5. I'm going to play bishop e7. I'm going to defend this pawn. I'm eventually going to get my queen out. I'm going to get the rook in the game. I'm going to castle. I'm still up a pawn. And let's see what's going on. And I'm up a lot on the clock here. My opponent has about 10 minutes, and I have, I don't know, 15. Usually, I just launched this channel. I'm reviewing these games on Wednesday, and I played this tournament on Saturday. So generally, I'll be fresher reviewing these games. But played g5, and my opponent played queen d2. Further attacking here, and also perhaps keying up a sacrifice on g5. I played bishop e7 to defend my weakness, and my opponent played bishop b5. I don't really know what the plan here is. I think it's to, I don't know, put pressure on the knight. I don't really know what that plan was, but I just castled here. I have ideas of perhaps playing something like f5, f4, g4, getting an attack going. And here my opponent sacrificed. So he's really low on time. I'm pretty sure I'm winning. I know the sacrifice is not really good, so I go ahead and take it. My opponent takes with the knight. I don't want to take again and allow this queen to check me because not only, I'm about 200 to 250 points rated higher than this guy. So not only could I just be forced into a draw with something like this, you just kind of check me forever, but I'm also probably losing where you can trap the king on the edge and then you do a rook lift where, yeah, my bishop covers it for now, but you bring your rook here, you check me, and you checkmate me. So definitely didn't want to take both pieces. So I played queen d8, gearing up to now threaten the knight, try to kick this knight out of my camp. You don't have the time to move your queen and attack me because I would take your knight. And so he plays h4. And okay, I didn't really know. I think something I can do here is just trade. Of course, you have to take with the pawn. You don't want to take with the queen because you don't want to trade pieces when you're losing. And white is not only down a pawn, but more importantly, they sacrifice their bishop. So if they trade and they're losing, it just becomes easier on me. So I wasn't really sure here. I played bishop g4, um, partially because I was in like he was in time trouble, and what I calculated roughly was like f3, bishop h5, g4, bishop g6, and my bishop defends my king. Maybe I sacrifice it back, and if he plays f3, I knew that it would open up this line to his king, and this bishop is an unprotected piece. And so they say loose pieces drop off. So if f3 occurs, bishop h5, and pretend it's my move, queen b6, attacks the king, attacks the bishop. You call that a fork, and that would win me material. And so I figured this move kind of tricky. If he moves the rook, that's also good for me. I can just drop the bishop back, get a little safer. And again, like I think I can always consider just taking, trading. I don't know, playing something like king g7 and getting my rook involved on the attack. But I went with this. Played f3. I played bishop h5. He played g4. So everything's going to plan. I played bishop g6, and now he plays f4. And so now I need to decide, like, do I want to play queen b6 right away and win this bishop? Well, queen b6, check. King moves, take bishop. f5. Oh, things are looking scary. Do I give the bishop back? Do I give the pawn back? I don't know. So what I decided on is I'm going to take this pawn. The queen takes back, and now I grab the bishop. He drops his king into the corner. I take the free piece, and he hits me with rook d5, where the rook is protected by the pawn, and it's attacking me here. And now, like, he's really low on time. I really just need to hold, find out how to defend here, and I'm going to win this game. The main moves I considered here were either queen e2 or queen takes b2. My goal is to get the queen to, like get this knight off the board and get the queen checking this king. I would love to trade queens where I'm up now 2 pieces versus 1, 2 rooks, but my pieces aren't in the game. So I decided on queen b2. Of course, if the queen leaves this diagonal, I will take the rook. And he hit me with h5. And I don't know if I played the best move here. Pretty sure it's not the computer best move. But what I did is bishop takes e4. So I decided, okay, I can give this piece back. And you can't take with the queen, threatening checkmate, because then I would take your rook, and then I would take your knight. So, for example, queen takes e4. If you get a move again, you checkmate me. But I hit you with the check. The king moves. And then I also forked your knight. So I take that. Not with my queen, though. I would take it with the bishop so I don't lose it. So now, and now I'm just have too much material. I'm going to be able to trade. I'm going to get the rook in here. So he has to take with the knight. And yeah, this is scary too. Ideas of like rook g5, which my bishop covers for now. But I always have moves like the queen dropping back. And now I hit him with knight e5, trying to dislodge the rook from seeing my king, adding further protection. There are no checks to my king. You got to know your checks. There's no checks to worry about. Bishop, knight here, I just take. And, queen here, I just take. So now he hits me with queen h6. So things are getting scary, getting around my king here. But again, there's no checks. Knight f6 would be checkmate if my bishop couldn't take, but it can. And here I played the best move, which is queen a3, where not only do I still attack this rook, but more importantly, now I'm trying to get in on the white king. Again, he's down to like probably 30 seconds here. I have closer to 5 minutes. I'll take better notes in the future. Plays rook d1 here, and I hit him with queen f3, checking the king and forking the knight. At worst, he plays knight h2. And the main thing to calculate here is knight takes g4, king f1, and, then I don't really have any checks. For example, knight takes g4, king f1, can't go here, no check. Can't go here or anything. Can't go here because of the knight. And what I missed in the game is obviously this is forking the king and the queen. Not used to the queen hanging around by my king. Pretty crazy game. So whatever, I bailed out. kind of lame. I just took the knight. I knew there were still no checks to my king. I'm up a knight. I still have this threat. I have checks like this now. I'm going to get this rook in the game. This bishop is annoying as well. So here he just flagged. I think he ran out of time. So started the tournament 1-0. Redeem myself against this opponent who plays tough, but I really shouldn't have lost against him. And yeah, I don't know. I'm still working through the Sicilian. I definitely don't think I'll be playing D6, G6 lines against this gambit. The next game, I'm playing as white here, and I played against a kid who's roughly 1700 USCF. And I was about 5 minutes down on the clock because I showed up late. I played C4, knight C6, G3, G6, bishop G2, bishop G7. So I'm playing the English opening here, where you control the center with a non-center pawn, control the light squares, and play knight f3, castles, castles. My opponent's playing like a hyper modern system, kind of like the King's Indian defense. D6, definitely the King's Indian defense. Knight C3, E5, and D4, where I'm just trying to blast open the center, say I have more space, and see what happens. The basic ideas in true King Indian defenses is black tries to checkmate the white king, and white tries to not get checkmated and then break through on the queen side. And if they do that, they generally win the game. So my opponent plays knight C6, and I give the knight a kick, gaining space. You push pawns, you gain space. You also leave behind holes. A good rule of thumb is when you have the space, you don't want to trade pieces. When you don't have space, you do want to trade pieces, just because your pieces are cramped. I play E4, grabbing more space, taking away more squares from my opponent. And my opponent plays A5. The idea there is they want to do something like knight D7, knight C5, and they don't want my B4 pawn to kick away the knight. The knight here is a pretty good piece. It's in the center. It's in a kind of an outpost. So I play bishop D2. I think bishop E3 is a better move, but against knight G4, I was just going to go back to bishop D2. So I guess I should have just played this anyway, see if he did that. Then I could play H3, go back here. And I would just prefer my bishop to be on this diagonal. But whatever, we played bishop D2, knight D7. Now I definitely wish I played bishop E3. Played A3, F5, and B4. Takes. Now my opponent doesn't have the idea of knight C5, but he did get his F pawn rolling. So he's trying to move his piece forward, get me checkmated. Takes my rook. I take back with the queen. He takes my E pawn, and I take with the knight. And I don't think it was really good of him to take the pawn. I would have personally done something like F4, G5, G4, H5, H4. Just try to push the pawns at the king and checkmate me. I'm never really thrilled to do something like this because it opens up the bishop. So yeah, I don't think taking is good by him. He threatens my knight here, and I play knight F to G5 with the idea of if you take my knight goes back here, and you can't challenge this knight. Like, this knight is just very annoying. It's centralized. It supports all sorts of things. It has tactical ideas. So yeah, he trades. I take back, and now he plays bishop F5. And I'm not 100% sure what my plan is here. Like, I debated moves like queen A7, trying to get in here, but I figured he'd just play queen C8. Like maybe like queen A7, get the rook involved, trying to get the move C5 going seems like a priority, but I determined to play bishop C3. Again, it's game 30, so I'm moving kind of quick. Creating a queen and bishop battery, and my main plan was to play the move F4 here, where if we just give black a nothing move, I play F4. You can't take because I discover an attack on your bishop. And, if you do nothing, well, then I just win a pawn here like this. And this is just winning for white. Things are collapsing for black. So I thought this bishop C3 idea was clever, but then my opponent played bishop H6 with good on them. Their diagonal is closed here. And so they said, hey, we're going to come this way and we're going to stop F4, where, now if I play F4, You could just take it, and I don't really know what I win for my bishop. Like, I debated f4 anyways with the idea of knight f6, checking the king, but I don't know. I didn't really see anything any there. I decided to play h3, um, perhaps with the idea to go g4, g5. G4, you attack the bishop goes back, and then g5, kicking the bishop back here, and now I have f4 ideas again. And also, I'm just trying to take away more space from my opponent. They played queen c8, a very common tactic, double attacking here. If I played g4, I figured they'd just trade, and then now I can never play f4, and I got to deal with things like bishop here, and they can try to get their queen here and just try to checkmate me. So I didn't want to create these dark square weaknesses around my king, and so I just decided on king h2, a very common defense. Weakens my f pawn a little bit, but does defend my g pawn. I mean, my h pawn. My opponent traded here, which I was pretty happy about. Having the bishop pair is considered an advantage. So I have two bishops versus my opponent's knight and bishop. When you have the bishop pair, you don't want to trade bishops usually. When you don't, you would like to trade this bishop for this bishop because you take away the pair. And my opponent plays queen a8, offering a queen trade. Of course, I don't want to trade on his terms because then I give him the open a file where the rook can come to a2 and invade, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I decided on king g2 here with the idea of if you take me, my rook takes back, and now my king is defending my f pawn, so I won't lose that pawn, and my rook can come invade on the a file. They played b6. I guess they're trying to slow down c5, but it opens up this diagonal to the queen, so kind of dangerous. Played rook b1, kind of trying to think through like b4 takes, opening up this b file, maybe getting this pawn going, getting discovered attacks going on there. And then they played queen b7, so they're saying, hey, we're not trading. We're going to bring our rook here and attack your queen. And I played queen b2. Of course, I do not want them to attack my queen, and now I can challenge for the a file. And my opponent played b5. Not a good move in my opinion. If I take, that would be quite bad for me because now I have these pawns which are isolated pawns, meaning pawns that are not protected by their friends, and they're also weak with my opponent attacking it. But I don't need to take. Instead, I play c5, and all sorts of tactics are happening now. He takes with the knight, and I missed a tactic here. Pause your video if you want to find it on your end. Okay, so what I should have played is c6. And you might be asking, what's going on here? Well, if queen b6, bishop takes the knight with check. And if queen takes bishop, now when I play queen b3, pinning the knight to the queen, to the king, pinning the knight to the queen, you don't have the ability to play pawn c6 yourself and defend your knight. So honestly, I feel like I should have found this tactic in the game. I had originally intended against knight takes c5 to play pawn takes d6 with the idea if you move my knight, I attack you here. But then I realized, moves like knight e3, checking me. Let's say I take, and then they take my bishop with check, and the rook is getting in, the queen's getting in, this bishop's getting in. Like, I'm getting mated. So I originally had wanted to do takes so that they don't have a pawn to defend, but I missed this idea of what we call this is a decoy tactic, where you force the queen to a square she doesn't want to be in, and then you do the tactic. But instead, I played queen b3. I'm running low on time now, and so is he. So we're both panicking a little bit. And of course, he plays c6, now defending. And I'm not really eager to trade off the bishop and giving him these two center pawns, which he can get rolling. So instead, I take here. I figure like this could get annoying. It's a pretty quick pawn if you don't deal with it. My opponent plays queen f7, attacking my f pawn, and I decide on rook b2. And then my opponent plays bishop c1, and he put it down with a little bit of flair. You know, he put this down as like, haha. And This move's annoying, you know. If I move the rook, nope, it's doing a job. So what I decided on is first I traded the knight because this knight I just have to be careful. Like if I move this rook here, then I run into tactics like knight e2 or knight f4, where the knight checks my king. If I take the knight, the queen discovers an attack on my queen, and I would lose my queen and the game. And so what I played in the game is I first traded the knight, and then I played rook c2. So now I don't have to worry about this knight anymore. And still, like, he has weaknesses. I got this pawn still. If I can defend, I think I'm okay. Plays queen f3. By the way, originally I had intended to play um, rook e2, but then I noticed not only these tactics, but also, or no, originally I had intended to take, and now rook e2. But then I noticed this, and yeah, this just loses. I have to defend my rook, and I would get checkmated. So I played rook c2. My opponent checks me, and I play king h2. King d1 runs into queen d1, which is maybe fine, but looks scary. So I tucked my king on h2 for now. And now my opponent played queen d1. I thought for a while here, I'm considering taking this pawn, but of course that would be checked. So I play queen b1, and I figured, haha, this is great. I double attack this knight, you know, my knight's defending here from this rook, checking my king. Like, I'm good here. And my opponent plays queen f1. And I was like, oh no, like everything is going bad here. First of all, if queen takes c1, this loses for a couple reasons. The main being rook takes f2 is check. The rook takes, and then of course the queen takes me because the rook was doing a job. So I definitely can't take here. Of course, if I take with the rook, well, then just rook takes f2 is checkmate. You can't take the queen because you're in check. And so then I was like, okay, what if I play h3 and then rook takes, queen here. Again, he only has like 30 seconds now, and I have about 3 minutes. So can I live this position? You know, and I was like, oh God, I can't calculate all this. And then I finally found it, and I spotted queen a2, where not only do I double protect my f pawn, but also I attack the d pawn, which if I can get this pawn with check, then I can drop back to defend my king. I'm going to get this pawn. I also was calculating sacrificing my queen and going queen takes c1, rook takes, queen takes, d7 is what I calculated. Queen g5, bishop takes e5, queen d8, and yeah, I didn't see a win here. I like if I was able to promote, I could win this, but you know, I don't think there's nothing I can really do to the king, and he's just gonna take this pawn. So yeah, I was for me to be calculating that, you know, sacrificing my queen, which would have been nifty, you know. This just shows that things had gone awry, but also why I kept this pawn. But yeah, just queen here and 5 pawns versus 4. He's going to win this pawn. This would be losing. And what my opponent did, which I think is a mistake, is before I played queen a2, which I took a while on, he offered a draw. And the mistake there is I'm the higher rated player by about 200 points. And when you offer, like, what you're supposed to do is you make a move and then you offer a draw right there. If instead you move and then 3 minutes later you offer a draw, well, basically what I can do is, you know, I only had 3-4 minutes. I can spend all my time thinking, calculating, and then at 1 second I can say draw accepted, because you're not allowed to offer a draw and then say never mind. So I could have spent all my time calculating stress-free. I have a draw in hand. I don't want to draw, but I could. Um, and so, yeah, I think you should offer to draw right away or just bluffed because this is looking scary. But yeah, I played Queen A2 and my opponent flagged here. So he ran out of time and I won. Through 2 games, 2-0, played 2 crazy games with, like, the king being unsafe, but, yeah, happy to be 2-0. This next match is against Corey, I think his name is Ansor. He is a FIDE master, which, if you're not familiar, like, his USCF rating is about 2,300 XX, and I'm about 1,900. Um, so he's higher rated by me by a lot. Plays E4, and he was board 1 and I was board 2 in this tournament, so I had played C5 and I knew he watched that game. And to be honest with you, I'm not at like I like to play the Sicilian against weaker opponents or equal opponents. I don't like to play the Sicilian against necessarily super strong opposition because I just assume they know more theory than me. They've memorized more moves. I didn't play the Sicilian that well again in my first game. And D5, the Scandinavian defense, is not a defense played at the top level, but it's one I know pretty well. I played a lot in Blitz, so I was confident I could get a good position in it. So he took, and I played Knight F6, an unusual version of the Sicilian. He played Knight C3, and I took his pawn. He played G3, and I said G6. This is already unusual, so he's going out of theory. He's just trying to mess me up. Plays Bishop G2, and I decide to trade my knight. He takes with the B pawn, opening up the B file for his rook, and I play Bishop G7. Plays Knight E2. I castle. He castles, and I played Knight D7. The main thing I need to decide here is clearly White is going to get pressure on my queen side of the board, the queen side of the board, and I need to decide how I'm going to deal with this. So I'm trying to decide like, do I want to play C6? Do I want to play C6, Knight D6, or Knight D7, Knight D6? Do I want to play C6, B6? Do I want to just bring my knight here and then adapt? Do I want to play H5, Rook A6, and then B6? So I decided on Knight D7 here, temporary blocking my bishop. He plays D3 to get his dark squared bishop on this diagonal, and now I play C6, blunting the bishop temporarily. He plays Bishop E3, and I play Knight F6, threatening to jump into D5. He plays Rook D1, so I can't move my bishop or I would lose this pawn. So I play Knight D5. He kicks his bishop back. Knight D5 attacks the bishop, also double attacks his C pawn. So I'm asking questions. Plays Bishop D2. I play Queen C7, defending my pawn. Again, something like Bishop F4. I can always play E5. He plays C4, putting his pawns to work, kicking my knight, opening up this diagonal. I drop my knight back to F6. He plays Rook E1, getting further pressure here. I play Rook E8. And he plays Queen C1, perhaps with the idea of playing Queen B2, or Bishop H6 is always an idea. Here, I play Bishop D7 with the main plan of going Rook D8 and then back to Bishop, putting the bishop back on C8. So if we just give White nothing moves, this is a pretty typical thing to do where you get your rooks developed, and then my bishop is doing a job. It's defending my pawn, but it's also attacking, and my rook is in the game. So I play Bishop D7. He plays Bishop C3. I play Rook D8. I go forward with the plan. He plays Queen A3, where he's attacking here, and now I play B6, blunting the rook temporarily, letting the bishop look at nothing, having my queen defend the A7 pawn. He plays C5. Don't really want to take where I get rid of one of his doubled pawns and I'm left with an isolated pawn, Like these are weaknesses for my opponent to attack. And I don't really want to push either. I don't really know. A5, B4 just seems not great for me. So I just ignore it for now and put my rook back to B8. And Nick plays Queen B2, double attacking here. And now I play E5 with the plan of going Knight D5, kicking this knight off of this diagonal. And then I always have ideas of like pushing the pawn, the bishop attacking. So I think things are going pretty well right now. I also wanted to mention that I had to worry about bishop a5 here. That's why I couldn't play b5, which maybe I would have considered is the main problem is bishop a5 pins my queen to my rook. The bishop's worth 3. The rook is worth 5, so that would not have been good. So moving forward, play e5, and then he hits me with a zinger. Well, first he takes, and I think I could have considered this, but again, the weakness pawns, you want to keep your pawns generally together where they can protect each other. And he hits me with the zinger, knight f4. And now I needed to calculate, like, first of all, am I playing to win? Am I playing to draw? Second off, we got to calculate some things. First thing we got to calculate is if we take the knight. So if we take the knight, they take my knight. I take back. They take back. I take. They take. Okay, seems even. I got some weaknesses, but they got no pieces to take advantage of the dark squares. Okay, what if instead I play knight g4, h3, knight h6? Like, what if I just ignore it and play c5? What if I play knight d5? So calculate a lot of things, and I eventually decided that this was the best for me, is just to take. He takes, I take, he takes, I take, he takes. And we get this position where this is a draw in practice. Like, this is a tie. I have 2 pawns here. He has 3 here. So I would say he's like slightly for choice, mainly being because I have to figure out how to defend things. And he has a 3 versus 2 majority on the queen side of the board, which is generally a little bit preferred because it's just easier to queen these pawns. But he also has weaknesses to deal with. So I traded, and then I played rook e8, and he played rook e7, pinning the bishop, threatening things like bishop c6. And so I traded, and then I played queen c8. And my thought here is that, like, I think this is a draw. I don't really think this guy wants to play for a draw with me. He's 400 points higher. And I don't really see myself losing this. My queen can come here. So he plays a4, and I play queen e8, and he plays queen f6, and then I hit him with a cool little. I play queen c8, where I'm kind of like I'm trying to get some attack going on too, but I have to defend here. Of course, I calculated things like what happens if I check, but his queen is defending here, and he's attacking here. I don't know if I really want to go for something like this. It runs into this, so I definitely have issues. He played queen d6, and now I hit him with a cool little tactic of c5, where my bishop discovers an attack. You can't push it. I just take. And if you take my b pawn, I take your a pawn. And now I have a pawn on a dark square. You have a light squared bishop, so I can always defend this pawn. I can attack here. And I was like, all right, this is like kind of a draw. A draw is a good result against this opponent. I retreated my bishop. He plays bishop d5. Of course, this is a move to consider. Just sacking the pawn and checking the king, or taking like this and just trying to defend everything. Don't really want to do this. It's an isolated pawn. And so what I decided on here is I'll play bishop f5, attack him here. He doesn't want to play this. He doesn't want to play this. And against bishop c4, which he did in the game, I thought, aha. First, I play king g7. I stop this queen from getting in here. And now, queen a7, I didn't get the move. I'm going to play bishop h5. And eventually my plan is to like get my queen on this diagonal and threaten this king, try to checkmate him. But, inexcusable blunder here. I mean, the move I think I would have played in the game, because I saw this tactic earlier, is I should have played queen f8, where I defend my pawn. I defend this pawn. But I played bishop h3, and I just blundered the f pawn. So really a bummer. Played a beautiful game and blundered. I can't play king h8. I get checkmated by queen f6. And so I'm forced to play queen h6. I'm only down a pawn. Like, maybe I can still come back here. But yeah, my notation runs thin here because I was low on time, and so was he. And I just blunder. Like, I don't know exactly what he played, but yeah, I played queen e8 here, which loses the bishop. Um, he somehow got his queen here. I was supposed to, I think he did something like check, and I went back, and he went, uh, what did he do? He went check here. I don't know, but I lost the bishop as well and lost this game. Maybe I had something like this, you know, but I don't know. It's looking bleak. Really, I should have just held the pawn. Obviously, like, hey, why did my opponent play queen a7? Queen f8, and I probably hold the draw, but it's not easy because eventually my opponent will play d4. And okay, yeah, it's 3 pawns versus 3 pawns, but my opponent has a passed pawn, and I have to defend here and stop that. But honestly, I probably should have done that. So bummer of a loss. Happy how I played. And just blundered at the end, which, like, there's multiple types of loss in chess. I would definitely say blunder, like one small blunder doesn't bother me as much as opposed to just like playing terrible. And I got like a drawn game against a FIDE master. So pretty good game. That means I was 2-1 on the day. Got one more game to go against a player named Tim. He's rated in the 1600s, mid 1600s. So again, I'm about 200 points higher rated. I play c4, the English opening. He plays e6, g3, d5, bishop g2, knight f6. We're both developing our pieces and getting prepared to castle. Plays b6, kind of like Queen's Indian-ish. Haven't played this a lot. Pretty atypical to open up this diagonal to your rook. I castled, bishop b7, b3, preparing to double fianchetto my bishop as well. Played bishop e7, bishop b2, so I'm double fianchettoed. Castled, d4, grabbing space in the center. He takes, I take. This is called the floating pawns usually, if this pawn was off the board. They're kind of a weakness for white, but they also do something, like they control the center squares. And my opponent plays c5. I played e3, takes, and now I have the floating pawns where these pawns are together, but they have no friends to protect them. So queen c7 is played, attacking my c4 pawn, and I play knight b to d2, defending the pawn, preparing to put my rook on the c file. My opponent plays rook d8, lining his rook up with my queen, and I play rook c1, lining my rook up with his queen. You constantly have to be calculating, like, what happens if I push these pawns? What happens if I push this knight? He plays knight d7, and I play rook e1, lining my rook up with the bishop, which is unprotected right now, which is something I noted. Played rook c8, and I played queen e2, getting my queen out of the same file as this rook, defending my c-pawn, and again, opening some tactics here. I also would like to put my queen on c2 and maybe get a tactic going like this, where I threaten checkmate and attack this bishop, but with his knight there, it doesn't really work. So played queen e2, and my opponent plays bishop a6 with the idea of, hey, I'm pressuring here. You can't play c5. Your bishop's lined up with the queen. And here I play knight g5, setting up a trap, which my opponent does not see. Plays h6, so pause your video if you want to try to find the winning move here for white. So there were two moves to consider here. The first move I planned to do was knight takes f7. And if the king takes, my queen takes on e6 with check. The king moves. I take the bishop with check. The king moves. And when the dust settles, I'm just up 2 pawns compared to my opponent. And his king is weaker. And this would have been, yeah, just winning. The other thing to consider is what happens if I do knight takes e6, pawn takes e6, queen takes, check. Let's say king h8, queen takes. And this is kind of what I had calculated. And what made me decide against this line is rook e8 and then queen a3. And I was just kind of trying to be greedy. I was like, okay. And then he takes this pawn, which I guess he couldn't even have taken the pawn because I just take with my rook. But I don't know. What I calculated is first he trades and then he takes this pawn, and this is totally fine for me if I calculate it a little bit. I calculated to here, and I was like, eh. But so here I can just do takes, takes, and then takes. And nothing is being attacked right now. So this would have been fine for me to go into. I'm up pawns. I have the bishop pair. His king is weak. But me calculating all that, I decided, why not just do knight takes f7? Because this way I make a contact check, and I make these checks, and I have tempo, meaning time, to get my queen out safely without any rook trading nonsense going on. But what happened in the game is I took on f7, and my opponent played knight f8. So obviously I just traded my knight for the rook. A knight is worth 3, a rook is worth 5, so a good trade for me. He took with the queen, and I played bishop h3, planning to take, and trade and win this bishop. Oh, sorry, guys. Ignore all that. Played rook c6, defending, and here I blunder with d5. My plan was if pawn takes, I take the bishop, and if the rook moves to d6, I play bishop a3. The rook moves again. I take, and then just take here a bunch. But good on my opponent. This is a blunder because knight takes d5 hits the board. I can't take with the pawn because, again, the bishop is still pinning my queen. So here I had a bit of a think. I'm trying to think of the best move. I just made a blunder. I'm trying to compose myself. I'm up on time. I play pretty fast, so pretty normal. So moves I considered: queen e5, threatening checkmate; queen g4, threatening checkmate; queen e4, threatening the rook, which is unprotected. And I decided on queen e4, where now I am threatening to take the knight. You can't take this pawn. I'm defending it 3 times. It's only attacked twice. And he plays knight b4, and my things are getting hairy. My original intention here was to play a3, but then he's got queen takes knight, pawn takes, queen takes, queen takes. Like I guess this is winning. Probably what I should have gone for. Whatever. I decided on bishop c3. I figured it was similar, but the difference is that I'm defending this knight, and the main idea is if this knight moves, it's doing a job of protecting the rook, so I get this rook. So, like, I'm okay trading pieces to just do all this. And my girlfriend's waving at me. And so I play bishop c3, and then he plays queen d3 with the idea of if I trade queens, he takes with the knight, and he forks my rooks. And so here I played bishop g2. Now the idea is if you take my queen, I take with the bishop and I attack your rook, and I'm still attacking your knight. And if you, I don't know, if you do nothing, now I take your queen, you take, I take, and when the dust settles, knight and bishop versus knight and bishop, bishop versus bishop, I'd just be up a clean rook there. So play bishop g2, and my opponent traded queens. I took with the bishop, attacking the rook. The rook goes to c8, and I get rid of the knight. The bishop comes. I'm just trying to simplify things. I'm winning. I'm up the exchange. Bishop for bishop, knight for knight, rook for rook, rook versus bishop. So that's an advantage to me, and I'm down and equal pawns. And so I play rook c2, defending the knight and getting planning maybe to play rook c1. My opponent plays rook d2, attacking the knight. I can't move the knight. I lose the rook. So I play rook e2. And my opponent trades. I was kind of surprised by this. He trades into an end game where he has one extra pawn, but I have the rook, which is generally viewed as winning. And so I play rook c2. He plays b5. a4 is an idea, but he would just play a6. a4, if he takes, I would take the bishop. So I play rook d2. The knight cannot get in the game, really, and because of my pieces. And so after king f7, now I hit him with bishop d3. If you move your bishop, you lose a pawn. So he just trades here. And after king e7, I play rook a3, where I'm going to win this pawn by force, nothing to do about it. I take the pawn. He's trying to activate his king to get this pawn and get this pawn going. Plays knight d7, stopping my rook from getting in here. I bring my rook to get in this way. He activates his king. I play rook g8. He activates his king. I take the pawn, attacking the knight. The knight comes to c5. And we're both low on time here. He's a little bit lower, but the main, first off, I'm winning. So I need to ask myself, can I gobble up this pawn with my rook and then still get back in time to defend this pawn and stopping this? Or like, how do I win this with the least amount of stress? And what I decided on is I decided to play rook c7, where I'm going to pin the knight to the king. It doesn't allow, if if you get your pawns rolling, not really a problem. You can't push it anymore. It would take, if the king moves, then I take the knight. So just requires you to go like a square you don't really want to go, which is d4. Again, you're trying to go over here. And so he plays e5, and I play g4 with the plan being, my plan is just go h4, g4, g5, and just say, hey, man, like I'm trying to queen my pawns too. I'm fast too. g4 takes h5, something like that, and give you something to think about. And here he plays b4. Oh, God. Sorry, guys. He plays b4. I play h4. Again, my plan is play g5. He plays king d4. And pause the video to find out how I win. What I decided on is I calculated rook takes c5 is winning. King takes, g5 takes, and I think a lot of things are winning here, but you don't take, which allows, if we take, the king goes back, king here, king here, king here, king here, queen takes. You don't take. Instead, after takes, you push up the h file, and he resigned here. But if the same thing occurs, he is not in time to stop the queen. Funny enough, I think it's also winning to sack the knight, play g5, have him capture myself. And the main point is that this king has to go get this pawn. And while he does that, I can just go get his pawns and then queen these guys. So end the tournament on 3-1. Pretty good tournament. Happy with how I played. Had a bad tournament before. Don't know if I'm going to do these videos as individual game recaps in the future, where they'd be shorter 15-minute videos or more tournaments. Please let me know in the chat what you like. And I just launched this YouTube, so please subscribe to this channel. I need to get to 1,000 subscribers before I monetize or anything. Would like to get more into creating chess content and chess streaming along with what I do for fantasy football. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.